Welcome to the Group Home Riches Podcast. If you have the desire to be your own boss, create your own schedule, and become financially free while at the same time helping people in need, then you've come to the right place. At grouphomeriches.com, we teach people exactly like yourself how to get started in the group home business. And on this podcast, you're going to hear their stories firsthand. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Group Home Riches Podcast. Today's guest is one of our current coaching clients who's rocking and rolling. She got off to an amazing start. And I was just telling Andy before she hopped on, she was one of those folks that I knew she was going to be successful just from the first time talking to her. She just had really positive mindset, really hungry. You could just hear it in her voice. So Hannah, thank you so much for coming on. And I'm excited for everybody to hear your story.
Hey, Brandon, thanks so much. That was really nice intro. I don't know. Hopefully I can live up to it.
You already have. So we have Hannah. Hannah will get your story here first. And then as well, we have the founder of grouphomeriches.com, Andy Rothschild, on the call as well.
Hey, guys.
So Hannah, before we kind of get into the nitty gritty details about how your business is about to be booming, why don't you first tell the folks just a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, background, and let them know what were you doing before you found us?
Okay, yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Texas, from Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I actually moved to South Louisiana about a year and a half ago, just in a weird twist of fate. And my background professionally is as a CPA, and I've spent the majority of that time in the commercial real estate industry. So I worked for large private equity firms, kind of like similar to like a BlackRock type company. And that's how I got introduced to real estate. And I was kind of, doing the whole like corporate thing and saw the returns that the big guys were making. And then around the same time, it caught my attention. And then around the same time, I read the book everybody else who's in real estate reads, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it all kind of came together. And I was like, I should be doing this myself. I'm on the wrong side of this desk. So I kind of started out on education and started my investing journey about, I guess, 2.5 years ago or so. But then when I found you guys, the game kind of changed. So really excited to talk about that.
Love to hear that. You will definitely get into that. Before that, you got into real estate investing. What strategy were you drawn to first?
Well, I had the shiny object syndrome. I had like the squirrel thing where I kind of tried everything. I started out trying to wholesale to build up capital. I was doing cold calling and marketing and hustling and grinding there. And then I ended up deciding to go the buy and hold route. So that's what I did next, focus there. And then I've also been on the lending side and done private money lending, like out of my self-directed IRA. So I liked the buy and hold for a long-term wealth building strategy. But at the same time, I realized, okay, this is not going to change my life now or get me out of corporate America, which was really my top priority.
Explain to the folks out there why not, because there's so many people that do read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I love that book about mindset. And you hear all this stuff about how real estate, you get passive income, generational wealth. Why aren't rentals going to change your life now?
So rentals are a get rich long scheme. It takes a while.
I think you just came up with a new slogan. I like that.
Yeah. You're absolutely going to build wealth, and you're going to do it from a number of different angles. You're going to have very modest cash flow. So like on an average property, you might make $100, $200 a month. Like if you've gotten a good deal, like if, and you've done everything correctly. So it's not going to have a big impact on your lifestyle now. You will be getting the tax depreciation write-off. You'll get appreciation of the value over time. You'll get the debt pay down. So in 10, 20 years, it will definitely increase your net worth, but it's not going to be income now.
Now pause, rewind, and marinate on that one more time, folks. So you, on an average good deal, tell the folks again how much you were expecting to make per month.
Maybe $100, $200.
100, $200 per month. Now, did you have a rental property or two, right?
Yep.
Cool. So how long did it take for you to even get to that point? How much education and like roughly how much money did you need to put into it in order to get to that point where you were earning 100 or $200 per month?
I shudder to even think about that. I think I've blocked it out of my memory.
Let's pull it out because I want the people to see like the real deal about this stuff.
So I did a number of mentorships, and maybe that's just me because I wanted to understand what I was doing, but I probably dropped easily 20 grand to
That's
get the
on
first one.
that's on education.
That was on education.
How much capital did you need to get in order to get the property and get it fixed up and everything
Mhm.
like that?
The capital actually did work out because I was able to get private money from all the networking I had been doing. So that's one area where the education did pay off, not having to go through a bank. But in terms of just the time in like finding that deal, I mean, I was really grinding it out
On the
a long
deals
time.
you were able to get private money that was 100% financed.
It was, yeah.
Okay, nice. That's rare. Most people, a lot of times, you have to come with about, I don't know, at least 20 or 30% down, even with private lenders. So that's awesome. But still,
Yeah, that was a unicorn
yeah.
situation.
So think about that, guys. And what would you say? It was about a year or two of hustling, grinding, learning before you got that first rental?
At least, yeah. Year and a half to 2 years of just nonstop working, calling, grinding.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
not like, you can't just read a book and then pop on Zillow and find one of these great $100 cash flowing rental properties. So
No.
it's a process on top of that. So
Yeah.
Andy, after hearing all of that stuff, what comes to your mind?
Yeah, this is the name of the game. I mean, it's look, she's a CPA. I mean, she knows it's a 10 to 20-year process of dealing with a lot of riffraff, again, for 20 years, every single day, for the most part. And it's a lot of work. Most people do not want to wait 20 years to have a halfway decent life. I mean, they just don't. It's just too long. Just takes way too long.
Now, you've quite a few rentals yourself. Looking back, if people are like trying to escape the 9 to 5 and get into entrepreneurship, would you recommend the buy and hold strategy as one of those cash vehicles to escape the rat race?
No. I mean, I think, look, if long term, it's good. I'm lucky because I've been doing it for a long time. But and eventually you do wake up and, like she said, you're getting the appreciation just because they're debasing the currency and everything else. But the real life changer is finding a business, and ideally a business inside the real estate sphere. So, and that's what these group homes really are.
Beautiful. We will definitely get into that. Hennis, thank you so much for breaking that down. It's valuable because there's a lot of people out there, that do think, well, you know what, 100 sounds good, but I'll find 10 properties that cash flow $300 and I'll have $3,000 of passive income.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's not always passive.
yeah, that's the other thing they don't really
It's never
talk
passive.
about that much. Do you have a property management company for your rentals, or are you doing your own management as well?
No, I do my own management, and that has been a journey too.
I
It's
think
not as easy
a
as the
journey is a nice
rumors
way to
make it
say
seem.
it. All right. So great background. You have the real estate investing knowledge, success in business prior to that. What made you start looking? Group home riches isn't something that you just stumble on in the middle of the night, like what made you find us?
Yeah, definitely not. So I actually stumbled upon another group initially that were kind of doing the shared housing model. They were really geared towards recovery homes for the addiction community. And I kind of went through their stuff, but they were more geared towards like nonprofits. And it was just too much red tape for me. I really wanted just like a straight business. And so I was talking to a friend of mine who was also just interested in taking the real estate and the co-living strategy and helping people and putting that all together. So I was just trying to figure it out. And I was talking to a friend of mine and she recommended you guys. And so I just kind of jumped into the podcast, saw the gold course for $200. And I was like, oh, like this is the cheapest thing I've ever seen in the real estate education industry, and jumped on it. And then I was pretty blown away by like, I mean, it's basically like a franchise in a box. Like you have the whole business model there, and it just connected a lot of dots. It made perfect sense to me.
Explain for the other folks that might be on that similar journey. They're looking up how to start assisted living facilities. Maybe they're looking into nonprofits and things like that. What was it about kind of our messaging and stories and stuff like that that stuck out as different to all those other strategies?
Well, I think with y'all, it's just, I mean, it's a lower barrier to entry for somebody who's trying to get started. Because if you're looking to go the licensed route, that takes a lot of really, really specialized knowledge. It takes a lot of capital that most regular people just don't really have starting out. So, first of all, I didn't even know you could do this like unlicensed, right? So I thought that was really cool. And then in terms of just how you go through the marketing and reaching out to the different agencies so that you can get the rents covered by third parties, I just thought was brilliant. Like you're just outsourcing the more intensive portion, but still providing a very valuable housing service to people that would otherwise fall through the cracks.
Let's rewind a little bit because, as you know, when you're looking into this stuff, there is a lot of information out there that typically just kind of takes you down the path in some sort of way. It's licensing or certifications of some sort, right? So
Yes.
why don't you break down for the folks? Do we just show you how to like avoid and duck the authorities, or what's different? You said you don't have to get a license. I'm sure there's a lot of people that just heard that and were like, wait, what? So why don't you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, it took me a minute to get comfortable with it too.
Exactly.
I mean, luckily through the content in the gold course, it really breaks it down, like the exact laws and the reason why you're protected, because this falls under federal fair housing law. And so when you really break it down and you think about it like, okay, this is no different than student housing, where if you have a single family home and you're renting each room to a student, that's allowed. So, okay, then if you have somebody who is struggling with addiction, who's considered mentally disabled under federal fair housing law, you can't discriminate against them because they're a protected class.
That's a perfect example. So what would it be called if, remind the folks out there where you are in Louisiana, correct?
Yes, I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana.
So there's college housing or like young professionals that live together out there, right?
Absolutely.
Do
Yep. Got to be college.
those landlords don't need a certificate or license, right?
They do not.
So if you were to house, say, people 65 and up, same living situation, the people just happen to be older, and the city comes by and says, whoa, 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 Hannah, you need a license and you need to fill out this paperwork and you need to pay us $350 in order to house these type of people. What would that be called?
Discrimination.
Bingo. Bingo. And we'll get into like the demographics that you serve and your property and everything like that. We'll just keep it vague for now. Let's say some of the people living in your properties now, they do need like, say, medical service, even counseling, right? Like addiction counseling. Do you need to go out and find employees to do that, or how is that handled?
I do not. So, and they pretty much understand the scenario that this is housing only, and we make that very clear. It's also very clear in the licensing agreement. I do have a house manager who has like a counseling type background, but he is not counseling them individually or anything of that nature. I have compiled just a list of organizations that can kind of help, and I'll point them in that direction, but that's up to them.
How often do you even need to do that?
Not very often. They actually come in pretty familiar with the system, so they kind of know what to do and where the resources are.
Yeah. So what Hannah is describing, guys, is you just get in a real life peek into what we call outsourcing in the gold course and in the material. All that's just a fancy term for other companies or organizations are providing that service. So Hannah, like you don't have to deal with the billing, scheduling, or anything regarding like those types of services, right?
No, that would be too much.
And then like it's important for you guys to just kind of understand this concept because a lot of people do get hung up on it. Hannah, how long did you spend like researching and diving into like that licensing idea before it like clicked for you?
I think I listened to like literally every single Group Home Riches podcast that had been done at that point in time. And by that point, I felt
Only just because of that, right?
that was the biggest hurdle.
Yeah, it's the biggest hang up, which is why I like to kind of dive in on this topic, right?
Yeah.
But then everybody's different. You need to get over like these mental hurdles. But then once you start getting out there, talking to people, and like you see how things go on in practice, that's another question I like to ask is, hey, how often do you even need to worry about outsourcing? It's actually very little when you do follow like our marketing guidelines and the process. 99% of the time, the people already have the services that they need set up. And you, as the landlord that's actually willing to work with these people, you're usually that last kind of piece for those folks.
That's exactly right. And it's like at the end of the day, it doesn't come up. All you do is present yourself as a landlord, which is pretty cookie cutter.
Yeah. So that's the big part of our battle is just to tackle those issues to get people confident enough to get out there and actually start taking action, which we'll get into actually. So before we kind of get into that process on how you started, were there any other issues? I know you're very big on education. Was there anything else that you were kind of nervous about or hesitant, or were there any other issues that were kind of holding you back from getting started?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think like anytime you're doing something new, like there's always going to be that fear present. And real estate, this business, it's you don't know what you don't know. So I think for me, mindset is something I had been working on for a couple of years to whenever you get that uncomfortable feeling like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to do this. Like that's exactly when you need to do it and just see what happens. And I'm sure we'll get into it, but that's kind of what we started doing on the calls. And then the reality is never as bad as you made it in your mind leading up to the action.
That's such a powerful life lesson. I don't know how else to describe it either. I'm sure there's a proverb or something out there that
For
explains
sure.
it perfectly. But yeah, I think everybody, depending on where they're at in life, business, whatever, everybody kind of knows what they need to do, right? There's something that's just like eating at you. You know you need to do it, but you just put it off. That's the thing you need to do. So,
Mhm.
related to this business, what was that for you?
I think it was like most people, it was like making the calls and just, you
Bingo.
know, yeah,
It's scary at
presenting
first, right?
myself. Right. Yeah, it is scary. It's a bit.
What were you like? You probably built it up. So you got the gold course. How long did you have the gold course before you were finally like, all right, I'm just going to partner with GHR and do the done for you deal?
Yeah, it was probably a minute. It was, I mean, probably at least a month. And I'm pretty sure y'all said, like, don't go through the whole gold course, just start making calls. And
You
I
went
didn't
through
do
it twice.
that.
You went through it twice, I bet.
Yeah, I went through it.
Yeah, it's definitely not supposed to be a novel. It's, go, what's it called? Choose your own adventure type book. So,
Yes.
but we know everybody's different. You have to kind of get over the mental hoops, right? The mental
Yeah,
facts, which is
you
fine.
do. In hindsight is 2020, but I just knew like I was in a place where I was like, I had looked at so many different, I guess like niches within real estate. And I just knew like in my soul, this was what I'm supposed to do.
Mhm.
And so my main limitation was time due to my W-2 job. Accountants work around the clock pretty much. So I thought, let me not recreate the wheel. Let me just partner with these guys let them do their marketing magic. And, it'll also give me the confidence to move forward because this is what I want to do. So let me not overthink it and just go.
Perfect. So let's dive into that. So to recap, you've been interested in real estate for a couple years. You don't have to give the exact amount if you don't want to, but I know you had rental property or properties. Do you want to give an idea of like what that business looked like? Is that one property, 10?
Yeah, it was actually just one property, like a
Okay.
long rental.
So
And then
you
I've
were
done some lending stuff.
able to get a rental. Yeah, getting into lending, that's awesome. You had the savings from your W-2 in order to do that. Wholesaling, I forgot to ask you, were you able to ever do any deals from wholesaling?
Man, wholesaling is a rough business. I spent a lot of money on marketing trying to do wholesaling. I got one property under contract that fell through because there was a title issue. So I never even actually closed on it. And then I kind of got discouraged with that because it seemed to be pretty oversaturated.
Oh, yeah.
At that time, that was like 2021. So it was a different market. People were not really interested in taking a discount on their property.
I mean, here's the thing with wholesaling, it is one of those cash vehicles. It's actually what kind of got me out of the rat race personally, but you kind of need to know what you're getting into. So you're looking for someone that's basically needs to sell their property for about 50 cents on the dollar. Now, you have found out the hard way how many sellers are like that out there.
Yeah, it's a needle in a haystack. You have to
It's
do
like a
a lot
needle in a
of volume.
haystack, and everybody who's putting out those "We Buy Houses" cash signs, you're competing with all of those. You're competing with people like me, competing with people like Andy. You're competing with the "We Buy Ugly Houses" people, right? So,
Yes,
um,
high
roughly,
competition.
again, we like to keep it real here. You don't have to say the exact amount, but do you know roughly how much money you spent in marketing just to get that one property under contract?
Oh man, probably 10 grand.
Okay. Yeah, we get our costs down. We're a little bit more cost effective than that, but that is not out of the ordinary. A lot of these big organizations that scale it out, that's what they plan for. It costs we have it around like probably about 3 or 4 grand, but we're bootstrappers and we don't do like a ton of volume. But just another lesson for you folks out there. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you can close the deal with no money down, but you're not going to find those deals with no money in marketing. You're basically a marketing company. So, we
Yeah.
won't
And I don't
ever,
think I understood that. I just
yeah,
started doing it.
yeah, it's fine. It's because a lot of these folks don't tell you that. You can go listen to 100 wholesaling podcasts and they will not tell you that key metric. So,
No, they want to sell you the course.
yeah, it's not like you're not going to be able to just go out, drive a neighborhood in like 2 or 3 hours and find a bunch of deals. That's just not the way it works. Again, we won't hammer that. I just wanted to kind of drill down into like the background that got you to the point where you're ready to take off. So, kind of dabbled in real estate. You were able to get a rental property, but I just want to kind of paint that picture for folks because it's not like you were a real estate tycoon and you had access to all these properties and it was just super easy for you, right? You had some real estate background. You did have a little bit of capital, but you were basically starting from zero, just like everybody else. So
100%. I had no idea what I was doing. So,
you had the gold course, you went through it too many times. That's fine. And then you decided to kind of take a leap, I guess you could say, and kind of partner with the coaching program. So why don't we get into that? When you started working with us, where were you at in the business? Like, did you have any referral sources? Did you have a property? Why don't you break down where you were at when you started with us?
no, I really hadn't done too much except going through the course and just kind of like starting to look up organizations and think about calling them,
Thinking about it, right?
thinking about it.
Let's dive into that concept because that's huge. It sounds small, like we just breeze by it. Andy, do we have you back?
Yep, I'm here. I'm just kind of going in and out on mute, but yes, I'm here. I'm listening.
Cool. let's kind of talk about that, just the analysis paralysis. So you heard Hannah's background. I mean, Hannah, you had made cold calls to find motivated sellers for wholesaling.
Yes,
So that is the hardest cold calling job, by the way, ever. So that means she skip traced people that were facing like foreclosure or behind on taxes or something like that, right? And she had to make, I don't know, maybe like I bet you 1,000 calls before you got that one contract, Hannah.
a lot of calls, and most of
Yes,
them were pretty upset with me. I
because
also, yeah,
yeah, you're soliciting them. They're not asking for a call. You're not selling them. You're just, hey, I know you're behind on taxes. Just calling you out of the blue here today to see if you want to sell your property for pennies on the dollar.
yeah. I also did door knocking for
Ooh,
people who are going through foreclosure. Like
talk
go to their,
about character building.
That's how you sharpen your teeth up real quick. Door knocking.
yeah,
Yep.
it was scary.
I did that. Did a lot of that.
Likewise. So even with that experience, Hannah, you were still a little bit nervous to do that first recommended action that we tell people to do.
Yeah, which seems crazy when I lay it out this
It's
way.
not crazy. Everybody goes through that. That's why I want to kind of zero in on it and like build it up, right? So,
Mm.
you're in the gold course. Obviously, we want everybody to understand the business model, understand these basic things. We don't want you to think code violations is going to come after you or anything like that. What is the first action that we recommend people to do, Hannah?
Mile and I'll pick up the phone and start calling these organizations and see where the need is. That's your
Uh,
market research.
that's kind of counterintuitive, right? Because you're a group home business. So when we did that for you, did you have a property that we were marketing or what was that like?
Not at all. And I had no idea how I was going to get one.
So that doesn't make sense. How are we calling to market for a group home when we don't even have a group home, right?
Yeah.
Was that something that you were nervous about? Was that one of the things that was holding you back from making those phone calls?
I think that piece I actually did understand after I had kind of been through enough podcasts because for me, like the way I look at real estate is like risk management or any kind of business. And so it's like, yeah, well, if you get a property, it's going to be sitting there vacant. So you want people lined up so you're not covering that cost. So that concept actually did make perfect sense.
Perfect. So yeah, that was the first thing so you had not done that on your own. What was it like? Why don't we break down that first process? So you enrolled in, the done for you package. What was the first thing that like the team did with you?
Yeah, so really we got all my accounts and everything set up, like the CRM with HubSpot, and then a lot of email marketing that was just going on in the background, like while I'm just living my life, which is great, which kind of funnels in to the Zoom calls. And so, as we're talking to these organizations, it's really not even a cold call because they're expecting it. So they're warmed up. They've seen my website already. So there's some credibility and trust already being built. And then we're, jumping on the calls together, which helped to kind of give me the confidence that I'm not doing anything wrong or going to get in trouble, right? We're just here solving a need. And it was really invaluable just to, watch you and Jade kind of go through the process and just how it flows and everything like that. And it took the fear right away.
How'd you feel even after that first meeting that we did? How did you feel about like all the nervous buildup that you had been
Mhm.
doing the couple months previously?
I felt kind of silly, to be honest. I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. What was I going on about?
you know, just on all of them. What was the response like when we did kind of introduce you to the organizations in your area?
I mean, the response was awesome. People are just happy to talk to me because they don't have a lot of landlords that they work with and they're overwhelmed by the need. So just to be able to step in and kind of bridge that gap, I mean, it's fulfilling on a personal level. And you're right, it's like the easiest quote unquote cold call I've ever had to make. And even if it turns out, we're not necessarily like the perfect fit to work together based on like how they get their funding, I still learn something from all of them. And it was like very pleasant.
Yeah. Working with the organizations, especially the large ones, it's kind of a long-term relationship. The
Mm-hmm.
main reason we do that is just really to like boost your confidence so you understand how to speak with these people. So just the mental shift, how valuable was that for you?
I can't put a value on it. You can't move forward until you have the mental shift because whatever, if you don't believe it's possible, you're not going to do it. You're just going to get stuck right there.
Yeah. And
So as soon as I kind of saw, like, oh, yeah, like this is a thing, they're not weirded out at all, and they actually want to talk to me, then it opens up the world.
Yep, exactly. That's always how I learned about pretty much everything. Once I see it in action, I'm like, oh, that's easy. So that's why we like to do this. Even when I started working with Andy, I had the same exact questions that all you guys have. Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, you're not employing nurses. Like, it just didn't make sense. Then he just took me to one of the properties. I'm like, oh, all right,
Yeah,
this
here it is.
this makes total sense now. I get it. So we don't have to go verbatim, but just like an idea for the folks who are out there listening, like what's like the introduction like, right? Because you're brand new, you don't have a ton of properties that you're marketing. You want to go over just kind of the introduction that we say to these people on the first Zoom meeting?
Yeah, for sure. So it's pretty vague, right? So you just say, hey, I'm Hannah. I'm the operations acquisition manager of Community First Housing. We're a new real estate company, and we are looking to help the community with affordable housing. And then from there, you really just want to get really curious about them and make it about them and just keep them talking, and ask them what their organization does and just be really interested, an active listener, ask them a lot of questions. And typically, if they're in that kind of line of work, they're very passionate about what they do. And so it helps to share your passion wherever that lies as well. And that's kind of like how you're going to connect, build that rapport, and then just continue the conversation to the next steps if it's a good fit working together.
There it is. So, yeah, we're not necessarily selling anything, right? We're just calling, introducing ourselves, letting them know what we plan on doing. So, we're not pretending like we have a ton of properties or anything like that. We're not pretending like we're this licensed facility, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you guys heard Hannah say, every single person out there can do this right now. They could pick up the phone and they could make that exact same phone call. So you don't have to have a property. You don't have to have a ton of capital, nothing like that. It's about building those relationships first. So how many meetings like that did you personally need to have, Hannah, before you were like, okay, this works? Like, I need to go find a property now.
Maybe like one or two. It was pretty obvious.
Yeah, it's everybody's risk tolerance is different. So was that another thing that was holding you back before you had those organizations, right? Like, do I get a property? Do I don't like?
Yeah, I was worried about how I was going to fill it for
Mhm.
sure. That was another hurdle.
And this was another reason why I loved working with you and Jade did as well was, yeah, we do a ton of stuff in the background, right? But you do have to be proactive and we kind of work in tandem together. So even though you have the rental property, we needed to find a landlord for you to work with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's break down that process because that's something that people absolutely struggle with. Why don't we break that process down? So we get the organizations for you, we get all your marketing rocking and rolling, we're getting leads incoming, right? Now it's time to find the property. Let's break that down. How did you go about doing that to get that first property?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, I didn't do anything. I just took y'all's advice. Ended up making a post on Facebook in the real estate investor network here locally. And these are like in every city. So you can go in person. Typically they'll have Facebook groups as well. So I would recommend both. And I just made a post. It was your pitch Brandon, it was, I forget exactly how it went, but something about 10xing your cash flow, having control over property. And I forget, there was maybe a third piece, but I posted it and got a lot of interest and just followed up with each person. And then we ended up, Brandon, Jade, and I taking a call with one gentleman who was he was amenable to the idea. We kind of broke down the whole model and everything like that. And that's pretty much all it took. Like, I think I got extremely lucky with that. So it just kind of goes to show, like, you can take a little bit of action and get a pretty big result.
Yeah, I want to change that. Definitely not luck. It's luck comes from the effort that you put forth before that. So it is simple, in my opinion. Me personally, I've never really spoken with any real estate investor ever and at least not piqued their interest. So if you guys can get somebody that's at least interested enough to hop on a Zoom call with us, and again, we do, we tell you what to say, but it is up to you to actually go to those meetings or post in the groups, right? But yeah, once somebody gets on there and like, here's the business model out, that pitch did end up working. Like you guys were working together, correct?
Correct. Yes, we're still working together. He
Beautiful.
wants to work together long term. So looking at opening number 2 in January.
Cool. So yeah, it doesn't always work out. Like maybe, it's not in the right neighborhood or anything like that, but bare minimum, every single investor that we've pitched, the investor is at least interested in working with our client. But even after that, like, have you been going to real estate meetups and talking to landlords and investors about this on your own?
Yeah. And even early on, there were 2 other gentlemen I spoke with who were interested. I've kept up with them. It's really like about the follow up. And at this point, I have probably 5 or 6 investors who are like really interested in the model.
I love it.
Yeah, they're, as soon as I get properties, they're calling me. So
Yeah. So it's not luck, guys. So we were able to do that first one with her, but you just heard the numbers. She's got 5 or 6 other investors lined up wanting to work with her. And, why do these people want to work with you? Are you just, being super secretive about the business and getting them to lease the property to you? And then we're just kind of sublet kind of under the investors' noses, or what's that look like? Why do these people why do you have 6 investors that want to work with you?
yeah, absolutely not. That would be really sketchy. I think I would have a very difficult time sleeping at night. I think the biggest thing you can do when you're pitching this is just be fully transparent. That's where you're going to build your trust, because this does take trust, right? Think about it like if you're a landlord and I'm saying, hey, you mind if I lease your property and just put like a bunch of attics in there? Like, I think it'll all work out. It's probably not going to go over well. So you want to just show them that you have thought this through, that you have a plan, and that you know what you're doing, and you want to explain it because they're business people. So you want to explain to them the pros of the model as well, which, as somebody who has a long-term rental, like, I can see side by side that the group home model is superior because nobody wants to deal with evictions.
It is. It's a superior asset. Hannah, let me ask you a question. You said you worked in the private equity space in Dallas. Have you ever heard of a company? It's a small PE shop up there called Transition Capital Partners.
That sounds familiar. I'm not
So those guys, they own a wide variety of companies, but one of the organizations that they used to own, they've sold it, and everybody listening to this can look this up. It's called DNS Residential Services. And I used to talk about this a lot, 10 years ago on the blogs and stuff. But DNS Residential Services is nothing more than a monstrous private equity backed group home riches type business model, right? They own small houses and then they house people typically with developmental disabilities. And I want to say at one point they had like 1,500 homes between Texas and Tennessee. And of course, this is when Transition Capital Partners owned them, and that was probably 7 or 8 years ago. And the reason I bring this up is because since you used to work in the PE space, you could probably use that if you did need to go find investors or bankers or what have you, use it as a reference point. I mean, this is obviously a business that makes sense. This PE company owned this firm called, or this business called DNS Residential. They had 1,500 homes, like,
Wow.
or more than that. Yeah, you could look them up on the internet. You personally could use it as part of your marketing pitch or whatever. But just generally speaking, I think one of the things when I was in this business, I saw these guys grow and they were just growing by leaps and bounds. And so that gave me the courage of my conviction. I was pretty convinced this business model will work. But then when I found out about these guys and I started researching them, I'm like, of course this business model works. So for what it's worth, I just wanted to ask if you had heard of them. Sounds like you may have, but yeah, check out DNS Residential. They're monstrous.
That's awesome. I actually hadn't, so that's really, really good to know.
Just a good snapshot of the possibility, right? So you're really like, I know a lot of people think that that first group home is like the end of the journey, right? But you are literally just getting started. So I know Andy has to take off in about 5-10 minutes. Do you have any questions for Andy, like about scaling systems or anything like that?
Yeah, I think I'm still pretty early on, with the one house. My goal is definitely to scale. That's the whole point. But in terms of systems, I am very interested in getting better at that and figuring out like how to automate things just to kind of buy my time back. So if you have any tips there, I'm definitely all
Uh,
ears.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing that Brandon always harps on all the time. Number one, you need scale, and really scale in this business is not that much. Just get 3 or 4 properties. Once you have 3 or 4 properties, you can pay somebody to oversee them for you. And that's as high level as you really need to take it. Of course, there's other things you can do, where you start systematizing your grocery runs, storing food in certain locations, trying to negotiate with Spectrum or Time Warner Cable or whomever to keep your bills down. Obviously, put everything on ACH, that way you're not wasting time at the end of the month, cutting checks, things along those lines. Definitely get a bookkeeper. You can go get a bookkeeper overseas that'll run everything on QuickBooks for you. You can do it yourself, but I mean, look, 4 properties is probably going to cost you. I think I paid $9 an hour. I was paying the bookkeepers this morning. I'm paying them late. But anyways, yeah, you're probably at $9 to $12 an hour for bookkeepers. Obviously, outsource everything overseas. I've been using bookkeepers over in India for probably 15 years. I mean, those are really the basics. Figure out the business model, get your house up and going, make sure it's profitable. Once it's profitable, get 2 or 3 more of them up and going, and then hire somebody. If you want your time back, hire somebody. And you can hire somebody to oversee these things for you. And even for them, it's relatively cush because realistically, 4 properties, they're not going to be working 40 hours a week. They're not. And then you can sit behind your computer and you can blast out emails, and you blast out emails to 500-600 caseworkers. The phone calls are going to start coming in. And then of the people on your list, eventually you're going to develop relationships with probably 10 or 15 of them. And they'll just start texting you. They'll just text you, hey, I got this person. They need a place to stay. They've got a $1,500 a month SSDI check. Can you help them out? And then you just send your person over to pick them up. I mean, it's pretty easy.
Awesome. Thank you. That's helpful. Because I was kind of
Yeah.
trying to
I
figure
mean,
out when do you hire somebody so that
yeah, I would say just hire somebody after your second or third house. I mean, if you already have other cash flow coming in, you could do it right off the bat. I would probably recommend waiting until you got 3 or 4 houses.
okay, perfect. I'm
Andy,
excited for that.
for Hannah and the other folks listening out there, you want to break down kind of that person, like what's their role, their title. You don't have to get into specifics, but how do they get paid? You want to break
Yeah,
that
I
down
mean,
a little bit?
there's a million ways of doing things, right? If you're kind of a hard-nosed business person, pay them by the hour, you want to try to 1099 them, try it out. I'm not a big 1099 fan because I don't want the Department of Labor coming after you if you fire them and they get irritated with you. If they truly are a contractor and you've got it all set up correctly, then by all means. So yeah, you could pay them by the hour, you could pay them monthly, you could pay them on a per property basis, and you could probably pay them on a per property basis without having to worry about too many 1099 related issues. You're still going to have to oversee them if you do that. And again, that works for a lot of people. If you wanted to, in my personal opinion, the easiest way to keep it passive for you is to give them a slice of the profits, and most people are going to pay 10 to probably 35% maybe. Another option is to give them equity in the business. That can work as well. So it really just depends on what your goals are and how much you want to be actively involved.
Okay. Yeah. I really like that. I think like even when you're getting to the profit share and the equity, it's like they're going to be more motivated.
Yeah. And if you really think about it, I mean, 90% of those deals that happen in the PE space when they're buying out companies, they're usually going to give the founder some sort of earnout, and they're going to say, hey, we'll buy your company for $10 just for sake of it. But of those $10, we want you to roll $2 into the new business. And so, hang on. So, yeah, I think, look, at the end of the day, the PE guys know exactly what they're doing. They are smart. They've been making more money than pretty much anybody for the longest time ever. And they give cuts of equity, they give slices of equity up, and it works for them. So I think that it's definitely a good model.
I appreciate your perspective on that.
Now, Hannah, you have the house supervisor, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the first property. Let's kind of just go over a little bit, like you don't have to get into exacts, but maybe what the numbers look like and how many tenants you have and how much time do you spend on managing that property now?
Yeah, sure. So this property is probably like on the smaller side for the group home riches model, but we have 7 beds in there. That includes the property manager. So he gets a discounted rent. He's paying $400 a month instead of market, which would probably be about $650 or so. And that's just something we kind of negotiated amongst ourselves. And then for the rest of the guys, this particular property is a sober living home for people transitioning out of treatment for drug and alcohol abuse. So we charge a $200 move-in fee, and then we charge $160 per week. And the reason I do the weekly rent is to encourage their money management skills, just because of this particular demographic is probably one of the more challenging ones to keep on track. Been a big learning curve, but we're in a good place now, and it is stabilized, and we've got long-term people in, I would say 2 months of opening. So we would net about $1,500 per month after all the bills are paid, which is pretty awesome. It's definitely
Which is about so that's about 10 times what your rentals is netting, right? And
yeah.
folks, keep in mind, this is a rental property. So the investor that she's working with, partnering with, he's getting whatever he wanted out of the deal as well.
Correct. And he gets more than market rent, so
Okay.
he's happy.
That's what I wanted to get into, which is maybe we'll dive into it a little bit more after Andy leaves us. But yeah, so what is a couple $100 over market rent or?
Yeah, maybe like 200.
Cool. So he's probably doubling his profit, right? So very happy investor. And it's stabilized now. You have the house supervisor, like the background and counseling. Does he handle a lot of the day-to-day activities for you already?
He handles the majority of it.
Cool. That might
Yeah.
be a candidate for this like operational manager type position that Andy was breaking down.
I think it is because we've had conversations about getting a second house, and he's kind of well positioned because he's retired essentially. He gets Social Security, so he has enough, but I think he wouldn't mind making a little bit more.
Love it. You're doing the marketing, looking for more properties. Even with all that, like how much time would you say that you spend per week on the business?
At this point, I think it was more at first, right? When I was trying to fill it, it's
Absolutely.
mostly just like calls, screening people, intake and stuff like that. But at this point, it's pretty minimal. Maybe a few hours.
How much of that is like spent on managing the property?
Maybe it might be like half a day all combined in terms of like, yeah, managing
So
the money, like
when
occasionally talking to the guys.
when you hear Andy talk about like, hey, at like 3 or 4 properties, that's when you can start to hire somebody. Even then, that's pretty much just a part-time position. And you want that to build out, right? So, you know what? I haven't asked you this in a couple podcasts. I'm sure Hannah has heard it, but Andy, at this point, about how many hours do you spend per month managing the shared living operation?
It's been the same for the last decade. I mean, it's like nothing. I don't know, 20 minutes. Um, and look, I've been doing it for a long time, so I don't want anybody to think that you're going to have that type of leverage at the very beginning. But you just heard Hannah. For me, really, it involves paying the bookkeepers. So that's logging into PayPal, looking at the invoice, paying them. So that's, even though you could put on your little notebook, it's 5 minutes. Usually it actually takes a little bit longer just because there's always little screw ups. You can't get logged in or whatever it is. So yeah, it's going to be that. And then looking over the books, figuring out how much money you made, and then just cutting yourself a check. I mean, that's what I do.
That's
So
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So,
it's usually 15 to 25 minutes a month, I would say.
and we're showing folks how to build businesses, not create jobs for themselves, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and then the other thing is, this is definitely not a get rich quick scheme by any means. What it is, that we're showing you how to create a cash generating business. And really, if you get enough of them up and going, it's extremely leveraged. If you hire the right people, which is easy to do, Hannah's already talking about how she's found somebody. It's a very, very leveraged income stream. And you can get it up and going, for all intents and purposes with minimal cash outlay.
Exactly. In my opinion, if you look at it, it's a way to take advantage of all the good things about the buying and holding strategy and being a landlord, but then you minimize all the negative aspects of it. And it's very counterintuitive, right? So a lot of investors, if they're just now listening to me, they're like, wait, this doesn't make sense. So
And keep in mind also, your business is worth something. I just was on the internet looking it up. I just typed in Transition Capital Partners. So they sold that company a couple of years ago, but it looks like somebody else that had bought them, they just sold DNS Residential. So, I mean, whatever you're building is sellable as well.
yeah, because it's generating profit, which even a lot of businesses don't do that, especially like the typical rental property.
Correct.
So we were kind of talking about this before we got into management questions for Andy. But Hannah, why don't we break down what are the advantages of this business model compared to the rental property? Like, why would the investor want to work with you? Why don't we break that down a little bit? What are the advantages of this model compared to the typical rental property?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a couple advantages. One we've already talked about, which is that what's in it for them is they can get above market rent, which if you have a lot of long-term rental properties, it's like the best thing you've ever heard, because a lot of people think landlords are millionaires and rich, and in reality, that's not the real case. They're kind of lucky to break even. So any kind of extra income they can get is exciting. And then on top of that, another big one for me is the whole no deferred maintenance issue. So if you have somebody in your property for a year and they're quote unquote qualified, like I'll tell you from my personal experience, I'm having some severe issues with my long-term tenant. He gives far more trouble than the sober guys. And so, he kind of got behind, and he actually ended up getting in a fight with the neighbor and in the front yard and trying to break the lease, and like got a dog without my permission and doing all this stuff. And so I can't just, since we don't have a licensing agreement, I have to evict him, and you have to kind of go through all that. And on top of that, I have no idea if he's taken care of the property. whenever we go to turn that property, it's like, who knows what state it's going to be in. So with the group home business, I'm in there every so often, just making sure, chores are getting done, everything's being maintained. We have cameras in there. So you have a lot more control over the property. If you have an asset, why wouldn't you want to control it? You're just going to save yourself a big expense in the future. So those are things that really appeal to me about this model. I feel like I'm
Yeah,
leaving something out.
there's a couple, but it's fine. That is a huge one though. And again, it's kind of counterintuitive for the folks that are just, now thinking about this model. It's not like, Hannah's not just putting a bunch of people recovering from drugs in the property and like letting them loose and right. So she's got a house supervisor in there who's just a trustworthy tenant reporting stuff back, like, so and so is not washing dishes, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have cameras in the property?
I do.
So
They're all over that property.
yep,
Yeah.
she got cameras so she can see what's going on. And then if she wanted to, which I don't know, do you ever do like routine house checks?
Not really routine because I'm trying to catch them off guard.
Well, you know what I mean. But you
But
pop it
yeah,
just to,
yeah, I pop in for
and
sure.
that's just one simple thing that you cannot do with the rental property. Like, when was the last time you saw the inside of that rental property?
Pretty much just whenever he has like a random maintenance request, like, hey, can you come change my light bulb?
Oh man, you got to get in that lease that they got to do that.
Yeah, I'm exaggerating a little, but not much.
But that is the type of stuff that you're going to get calls about, right?
Yeah.
So that's a huge one. There's no deferred maintenance. I used to work in property management, and my job was to go do the walks after people moved out and create the punch lists, what we needed to do. And there were some properties where I would open the door and like roaches would just fall on my arm, and I would close it and I would,
Oh.
yeah, like you would not believe the type of stuff that I've seen. So that's what deferred maintenance is. You don't hear from people, they pay on time, you think you have a great tenant, and then you walk in and you realize you've had a hoarder in there for 2 years and you need to completely build a brand new apartment. There's nothing
Mm-hmm.
like that that's going to happen. We've broke down just look, everybody wants to help people. If you're listening to this, that's probably a main motivation for you. But the cash flow is, like we say, it's about 10x the typical rental property, right? So that's a huge one. That's going to it gives you a lot more operational income, right? So after a couple properties, Hannah, you could actually look into have an operational manager that can make a good living from it. With
Mm-hmm.
your rental property, there's no way you could do that. There's no way you could hire a property management company. It would,
No,
it would
no.
put you in the negative.
And you're also spreading out your vacancy risk if you think about it.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that. And also the capital. It did not take a lot of capital for you to get started. Obviously, you invested with us, but besides that, like, how much money did it cost for you to start the business?
Yeah, pretty much just, deposit and first month's rent.
There
It's
we
a
go.
very low barrier to entry,
And
which was one of the main things that attracted me to it.
the pitch that we talked about, when we spoke with the investor that you're working with, you did have the capital in order to, put down first month and everything like that. Do you think that we would have been able to work out a partnership with that gentleman if you had like zero money to put down? Do you think he would have partnered with you, let you operate out of that property in order for maybe like a bigger split of the profit or even a higher rent per month?
I think he may have. Yeah, I
Most
do.
most
Even
of
on,
them will. It's
Mhm.
pretty much the same conversation, except to when it comes down to the talking numbers.
Yeah,
So instead of him getting maybe $200 more, you may need to cut into that profit a little bit more or work out like an even higher rent. But folks, that's how you can start this with literally no money out of your pocket, right? So very cool. And now, when did you start working with us?
when was that? I
Think we're
guess
just coming up on like our third or fourth month.
Yeah, I want to say August or September. I
That
want to say August.
sounds about right. Probably towards the end of August. So it took a little bit to get the referral sources, get everything set up. But how long has the property been like operational and full?
Property's been operational for just over 2 months.
Okay. So it took about 2 months for you to be rocking and rolling for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Beautiful.
Yeah, it was pretty fast.
Now, once you like kind of got over your fear of speaking with people, you learn how to pitch the investors, you learn how to talk with the organizations. At this point, is the challenge just kind of getting the properties?
At this point, that challenge is going down because I'm getting a lot of investors interested in working together. But yeah, that's definitely the next step is just getting more of the properties
It's about
and then,
repeating that process.
yeah, just reproducing it essentially.
Well, it's awesome. And like I said, it's been a pleasure working with you. Me and Jade, we knew from the jump you were going to be successful just because of the positive mindset. We could tell you were really eager, you were very proactive, you did everything that we told you. So we knew you'd be on the podcast telling your story soon.
Well, listen, I appreciate y'all so much. I'm grateful that I even found Group Home Riches, and I'm grateful that I get to do this because it's a win-win. It's an amazing business that I can continue to scale, and it feels awesome to help people. Like just the personal connections have been really rewarding. So appreciate y'all, the Trailblazers.
Andy had to leave us, but he won't say it. He's always going to say, "Hey, there's bigger fish in the sea, and this is the oldest business in the book." But as far as I know, look, he's been talking about this stuff online for over 10 years. You're just now seeing investors kind of dabble in this and start to talk about it, but he was really ahead of the curve, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's very humble.
Yeah. All right, awesome. So we definitely have to have you on for part two, but like let's put it out into the universe now. Where do you see yourself? Where do you see the business like a year? What's going to happen in 2024?
Ooh, a year. That's an exciting thought. I think I would really like to be at like 6 within a year. I'm going to set that as my minimum goal. And we're going to do the actions and put it in the universe and see where we fall.
Totally doable. I mean, you got 6 investors lined up now.
Right. I think, yeah.
Do you plan on continuing the rental arbitrage or do you plan on taking down some of these properties yourself?
I am in a place where I don't really care, to be honest with you. Like I'm open to either or.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to take the opportunities that come first. I'm pursuing both.
I like that strategy. I like that. Yeah, it's a weird real estate market, but you have a little bit of content about how to find off-market properties, which I think you've already dabbled in it too. But if you need help there, feel free to reach out anytime. We don't like to put it in the gold course or in our content or anything like that, but both me and Andy, that's kind of our background is being able to find those off-market home run deals. So if
Hmm.
you ever need advice on there, feel free to reach out anytime. Also, you were able to work with our team. What did you think about that? Like, working with virtual assistants and having people like Medell and Amy that could, kind of do a lot of that really time consuming stuff in the background. What was that like for you?
It was awesome. And I think it was really good for me because, as I started out in real estate, like I like to refer to myself as a recovering lone wolf,
Oh, yeah.
where I was trying to do everything myself on top of my W-2 and just burning myself out. And so just to kind of come in and see like the team running everything in the background and be like, oh yeah, like I'm not that special like other people can do this and really free up my time. It really inspired me, and it's kind of like it just set up goals for me of like how I want to run it in the future, and like how I want to scale.
Yeah. So that's definitely, I learned the art of outsourcing from wholesaling. That's another reason why a lot of wholesalers just get left in the dust because there's so much little tedious stuff that needs to get done that's super time consuming, and they do fall into that trap of trying to do everything on their own, when in order to do consistent deals, you need to be like out signing contracts only, right? Like,
Yeah,
so
that was me.
call. Yep, yeah, I understand. So, but you could take those skills and apply it to any business. So you got to kind of see the taste of working with our team. How long do you think that would have taken you to do all the stuff the team was doing? How long do you think that would have taken you to do on your own?
It would have taken so much longer. I don't
Right.
even know if I don't even think I would have a house, to be honest with you.
If it even would have been done, right? So,
Correct.
so that's another thing. I'll continue to work with you on that. At least finding like your first virtual assistant that can do like the little miscellaneous task. It's so nice to be, hey, Medell, like go shoot this person a message, right? So, well, I'm excited to see what you can do. It was a pleasure working with you. And we definitely have to do a part two when you get at least 6 properties rocking and rolling over the next year.
Deal. I love it. Thank you, Brent.
So any parting words for the folks out there, let them know that. And also let the people know where they can find you if they want to reach out and learn more about you.
Yeah, for sure. So I have my website, which Group Home Riches did. So if you're like me and not very techy and don't want to deal with it, just I highly recommend signing up through them. So it's Community First Housing. That's the group home business. And then if you want to connect with me just on general real estate stuff, whether that be lending or, I'll talk with anybody all day about real estate. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Hannah Buys Homes. And parting words, I think the biggest thing I've learned in just my overall real estate journey and doing this is that the fear is always going to be present. So the biggest thing you can do for yourself is just choose to deal with the fear now instead of choosing to deal with the regret of not doing what you wanted to do later. That's a trade-off, and experience is the best teacher. So sometimes you got to just jump off a cliff.
I love it. That's the perfect parting words. So, Hannah, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story. It's going to be inspiring to a ton of people out there. And I look forward to hearing doing number 2 here soon.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.